Space, the final frontier, infinity and beyond. Or, as my younger brother simply called it, the up above. Ever since he learned to walk, he was fascinated with the sky. He would look up at it almost every night, admiring the twinkling stars up above. I will always remember the night he first said that he wanted to explore space. He was looking up at the small pinpricks of lights that were scattered across the black sky and said, "Dad, I want to go to the up above." My dad, who was also in the garden with my brother and I, looked down at him and replied, "The up above? Where's that, Marty?" Marty raised his little arm and pointed straight upwards, towards outer space, and boldly said, "There!" In the following couple of years, Marty's obsession with space and the cosmos grew. For his 5th birthday, my parents bought him a telescope, which he routinely used every night. He made his own astronaut helmet, which was created with a bucket and a lot of tinfoil. And when Marty started spending more time in bed, Mom and Dad struck hundreds of glow-in-the-dark stars across his own bedroom ceiling. They spread across his room, creating a large galaxy that Marty could be able to go to sleep amongst. I fondly remember walking past his bedroom, peeking in and seeing him fast asleep with a smile on his face as the glowing stars shone all around him. I didn't share Marty's obsession with space, but rather I was more interested in the creatures that resided on our own planet. Animals were what captivated me, especially one animal in particular. Outside my bedroom window, a large street light illuminated a large portion of our front garden and the road. The long black pole that was cemented into the pavement stood up high, and, like a moth to a flame, this light attracted a small squirrel that would climb it each night. I would patiently wait at my window at dusk and eagerly awaited the arrival of the cute rodent, and each night he did not disappoint. The squirrel would appear and would start to climb the metal pole, ascending to its top. On one particular night, I watched on in awe as the furry animal gracefully climbed up the streetlight. The squirrel was almost at the top when the bright light suddenly flickered out. The street and the garden were plunged into darkness. Then something happened that I didn't think possible. The pitch-black night sky grew even darker. A black shadow drifted through the air, darkening everything it touched. I saw it slowly encroach upon the street, and then it glided into our front yard. The shadow moved with unnatural purpose, like it knew exactly where it was heading. The shadow slowly drifted among the garden and towards the house, looming over the yard and turning the grass black. As it approached the front door, the porch light flickered out too, unable to compete with the rich darkness of the shadow. I sat at the window, overcome with fear with what I was looking at. I didn't know whether to run or to hide. Before I could decide, I heard a popping sound and then a slight fizzle. Then I heard the same two noises again, this time slightly closer towards me. That's when my mind made its decision. I wouldn't run, I wouldn't hide. My brain came to the conclusion that I needed to help Marty. His body was growing weaker by the day, so I knew he wouldn't be able to defend himself. If it came to that, I would have to be the one to stand up for him. I stood at my bedroom door for a moment, trying to control my breathing and summon enough courage to go out of the safety of my room. With one final intake of breath, I quietly opened the door and crept out into the hallway. The long corridor was dark, but not as dark as the garden had been when the shadow was hovering over it. Whatever the strange shadow was, it didn't appear to be in the hallway. I tiptoed along the hallway, trying to stay silent as I moved towards my 6-year-old brother's room. Pop. Fizzle. I darted my head behind me to see what had made the noise. I saw the hallway light bulb had blown, and just behind it loomed the dark shadow. My feet and legs went into autopilot, and I quickly made my way down the rest of the hallway and burst through into Marty's bedroom. Marty was still asleep, looking even skinnier than when I had last seen him a few hours ago. His sleeping body was illuminated by the glowing galaxy that was his bedroom. I darted over to his bedside and shook him awake. He slowly opened his eyes and looked up at me in confusion. "Are you alright, Marty?" I asked him in a whisper. "Yeah, why?" he puzzledly asked in a sickly voice that I had been forced to get accustomed to. And before I could respond, Marty's room became even darker than it had ever been before. The shadow had lurked its way down the hallway and had now entered the room that both of us were in. I looked up towards the ceiling, and the glow-in-the-dark stars that were scattered across it were no longer visible. "What happened? I can't see," I heard Marty say in a frightened tone. I reached out towards his hand and clasped it. I was scared beyond belief, but I had to stay composed for my brother. I opened my mouth to whisper a response, but as I did, something appeared within the shadow. When I say something, I mean lots of little things. Tiny pinpricks of light all flashed out on the blackness. Tiny pinpricks of light all flashed out of the darkness, like hundreds of tiny stars spread out across a dark night sky. I heard Marty let out a small sound of astonishment, but I was more afraid. I knew what these lights were. I don't know how exactly I know it, but I could just tell. They were numerous pairs of eyes, twinkling from inside the black shadow that had carried them here. The hundreds of eyes stared down at my brother and me from all directions in the room. I wasn't sure exactly what they wanted, but when I heard a low growl, I knew it wasn't something good. I had to get Marty out of there. He didn't seem afraid, but I just had a feeling that we weren't safe. The absence of fear that Marty felt, I made up for. My heart pounded in my chest like a meteor shower smashing into earth. Somehow, in my panicked state, my mind produced a kind of idea how to get my little brother out of the room without him being afraid. I dropped to my knees and began to feel around the floor with my hands, still conscious of the many eyes that were looking at me. I then felt what I had been looking for, the bucket wrapped in tinfoil, Marty's astronaut helmet. I picked it up with both hands and scrunched it around to find Marty. I felt his head and so reached out and placed the spaceman helmet onto it. I then felt for his small hand and firmly grasped it. "You've always wanted to go up and above. Well, Marty, you made it," I quietly said to him, trying to disguise my own fear. I couldn't see my brother, but I could feel the smile that beamed out of his face as he thought that he was actually going to see outer space after all. I helped Marty to his feet, and as I did, I felt how weak he had become. I tried my best to help him walk out of his room and away from the shadow. We slowly stumbled through the black abyss, with the only light available being the glowing eyes that watched our every move. With each step, I felt Marty's excitement grow, as it did look like we were walking through a cosmic galaxy. It was Marty's dream to go up and above and walk amongst the stars. With each step growing his excitement, I felt him growing weaker, and I needed to support his weight more and more. Also, the further we moved, the more the shadow crept behind us. I was scared out of my mind as to what this thing was going to do to us, but I had to stay strong. I then heard a thud and I felt Marty hit the floor. I stopped suddenly and tried to help him up, and as I did, I saw the dark shadow and the eyes also move towards where Marty had fallen. They descended onto him like vultures onto a dying man. I screamed out for them to stop, for them to leave him alone, but they kept surrounding my brother. The shadow then disappeared, allowing some light to enter my eyes once again. I rushed over to Marty, who was still lying on the floor. Behind me, I heard his door swing open and both my parents rushed in. I then looked back at Marty, who was laying on the ground, completely still. The one thing I will always remember about the night I lost my brother is the large smile that was plastered on his face, the smile that formed when you thought he was going on his spacewalk. To this day, I'm still unsure as to what did come from my brother and me that night. I still don't know if they are what caused Marty's life to be cut short, or whether his sickness took him first. All I know is that Every night I look up into the night sky and look up above. I look towards the pale shining orb in the sky, but I don't see a man on the moon looking back at me. I see a little boy.